Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Mondays for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great.
All right, boys and girls, welcome back. This is Eric and Matt here with LLP, your home for all things freedom in a world gone completely mad, full of debauchery, chaos, and just downright damn craziness.
Crazy lobbyists.
Yes, in the case of today's show, we're going to be discussing lobbying. Now, of course, you know us. We go off the rails on a lot of different concepts and discussions throughout the show, but we are going to eventually kind of focus on lobbying. You know, what is lobbying? What does it accomplish? Is it good or bad? How should we look at this? And primarily in the vein of the Second Amendment. Okay, when we look at these gun bills and we have these pro-gun lobby organizations that come in, anti-gun lobby organizations come in, what are they trying to accomplish? How do they accomplish their goals? What is the purpose of it all? How does it equate to you and I, average everyday man? That's kind of what we really want to discuss. And I think a lot of people are confused about the subject. We are going to dive into it, and we're going to have a lot of fun with today's show. And we're going to talk about our weeks and see how y'all are doing. And I also... typically every show, y'all, I just want to do some quick housekeeping here. Every show, I typically will put out a tweet. So make sure you follow me on Iraq Veteran 8888 over on X/Twitter. I always will put out an email saying, hey, this is the subject for today's show. This is what we're talking about. I may give some context, and I offer you guys a chance to provide your commentary and ask any questions. And while we're cutting the show, you're kind of interacting with the show, even though I may not be responding on Twitter. We may read some of your tweets here on the show and respond to some of your questions and or comments. So make sure you're always checking the Twitter feed, because you never know when we might be recording. I don't announce it. We just kind of throw it up there, and you guys can, get in on the conversation. So we will check in on some questions and answers. I've been promising that for a few shows. We've gotten a little long-winded and had the subject matter was really deep to dive into. But I think today's show, we're going to have a little time to get into some questions. So we will do that today. And a few folks have been asking about flights and such. We are going to get back into doing some of those. If you look at some of the older LLP content, we were doing some of the like whiskey flights and pepper flights and doing various foods and coffee. I really enjoy that type of stuff. And to give you just a quick little teaser, okay, I did get some Bankman cigars. Now, I don't know if we're going to sit out there and try to smoke, freaking 5 cigars in one sitting. I don't know how fun that would be. Well, maybe for some of you, but I got a great selection of Bankmans here, okay? And, I've always been kind of the kind of guy that, I really do like the My Father Connecticut's.
Great stick.
Is a great Connecticut. I do like the My Father Connecticut a lot. And also, I really like Padron cigars a lot. I mean, it's a known thing that I'm a Padron junkie. I love the Gurkha rum cigars and cognac cigars. Those are great. As many of you know, that was the particular cigar that the Navy SEALs celebrated with after they killed bin Laden.
Yeah,
they all had the Gurkha rum cigar. Anyway, I don't know if we're going to smoke 5 cigars in one sitting, but we definitely will give our thoughts on these Bankmans. So we do have some flights on the way. We might bring in some guests and maybe have 5 of us sit here, and then each person maybe give an opinion on what they think about each cigar. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, because there's no way you're going to make it through 5 sticks in one sitting, man.
Speak for yourself, son.
You would have a serious case of nicotine poisoning going on.
All right,
man.
look, so it is a known fact, all right, I have quit drinking, quit smoking. I haven't had a drink in over 3 years, and I will occasionally still have a cigar on occasion. Special arrangement, special celebration with friends, something like that. So some of the flights that we're doing, we may not really work with alcohol much, but if we do, a little taste is not the end of the world. So we may still do some alcohol flights, and we'll have some fun with that in the future.
Yeah, man.
Right now, we're going to go ahead and give a shout out to the first sponsor of the show, and that is our friends at Patriot Supply. Memorial Day is more than just a long weekend. It's a time to remember those who sacrificed for our freedom and to make sure we're doing our part to protect what they fought for. For me, that means making sure my family's prepared for whatever comes next. And right now, my Patriot Supply, a company I personally trust, is running their Memorial Day sale, and it's their biggest of the season. You can save up to 60% on the emergency gear that matters most: emergency food kits, water filtration, off-grid power systems, and much more. Preparedness is not about panic. It's about peace of mind. It's about knowing that if the shelves go empty or the grid goes down, you're already covered. And this sale makes it more affordable than ever to get there. If you've been thinking about preparing or expanding your supplies, this is the time to do it. But this sale won't stick around, so go to mypatriotsupply.com/LLP Lima Lima Papa to stock up today. That's mypatriotsupply.com/LLP. Check them out and get yourself some food. Heck yeah. That's not a bad deal at all, is it? How have things been going this week? You get your butt kicked again?
Yeah, man. Always, man. So I did, as you guys know, obviously we've talked about it before. I own Alliance Jiu-Jitsu in Roswell, Georgia. So we train Jiu-Jitsu a lot, quite a bit. And also I wrestle. So my daughter wrestles at Morris Fitness in Alpharetta, Georgia. And I wrestle with Morris Fitness in Alpharetta, Georgia. So I train there. They have an adult class, older adults that train on the weekends, but I'm usually not able to catch that class. So I asked the coach there, I was like, hey, can I just jump in with the high school and college kids? I mean, he said yes. That probably wasn't a good idea on my part. Those guys have gas tanks for days, man. Abs. I got a black eye. Like, if you look, man, I have a black eye right here.
Oh.
It happens. It's just part of jiu-jitsu and wrestling. You get fingers to the face. You're doing a lot of hand fighting. I love the class. I wear a Whoop band. If you guys wear their Whoop bands. Not an endorsement, but if you're serious about training, it gives you all your information, biometrics, heart rate, which zone you're in, lasts for weeks, but it lets you know how many calories you burn. So immediately after that training session, it's like, oh, hey, guess what? You burn 1,480 calories in an hour and a half. And I wasn't even keeping up with them. I was kind of probably going like half speed because I'm older. So for you to go in there and burn 1,400 plus calories in an hour and a half while wrestling and getting beat up, you could say I'm having a rough day.
Yeah.
I woke up pretty sore today, but we do that twice a week. We train jiu-jitsu, 2 or 3 times a week, and it's a pretty good training regimen.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, as you can see, we've got a puppy in the studio here. This is Mona, our new European Doberman puppy.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm doing some babysitting today. I'm a man of many talents. Not only do I have a podcast, but I also handle some babysitting on occasion. So mommy's upstairs trying to sleep, so we've got her in the studio here today, and she's getting into everything, aren't you, girl? But things have been good on my end. There's not really a whole lot to report other than just the same busyness and everything going on. And, overall, life is good. No complaints. So we'll talk a little bit about this lobbying stuff, because I know that, a lot of people, it's kind of the talk right now. I mean, with everything going on with HPA, I know that was originally going to be the primary discussion of today's show, was talking about the Hearing Protection Act. But as these shows come out, y'all, I'm just giving you an idea that, sometimes we record these shows in advance, and sometimes it can be as much as a couple of weeks before a show drops. So as a result, I didn't really want to talk about stuff that's overly time sensitive.
Right.
Because, I didn't really want people to get the wrong idea about what we're talking about, because some developments could still come in regards to HPA. All I can really do about HPA is discuss it in the context of what's happening right now. So if you're listening on the show, don't take this as gospel for what is going on at the precise moment. This is merely to draw some interest to the subject so that people know what's going on. And I'm going to put this girl down. She's getting angsty here.
Yeah, and I think that's very important that, we do pre-record some episodes, and we don't want to put out, old information. So we try to stay on top of it. And the HPA, or Hearing Protection Act, it's a very active situation. So things are changing day by day. We just want to make sure we're correct.
It's still going through the various committees. So it just made it out of means and ways. And of course, it got an upvote to essentially where that's at right now. And again, y'all, look at the latest updates on what's going on with HPA. This information could be slightly a week or two old by the time you hear it, but I'm just trying to give you the context of what today's conversation is about. Does this lobbying somehow put us in, a situation where we're all pulling against each other? And sometimes it might, right? So what's going on with HPA originally was that the Hearing Protection Act essentially wants to remove suppressors from the NFA. Okay. Which at its face value, you're thinking, okay, cool, remove suppressors from the NFA. And the whole idea would be that, all right, that's a building block to where if we can take suppressors off of the National Firearms Act and remove the $200 tax stamp, remove the registration, then in theory, then we can go for short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and maybe even eventually machine guns and completely gut the NFA. The whole question is the constitutionality of the NFA, right? The constitutionality of taxing a right. So it appears that some compromise has been reached on the situation concerning HPA. So they're going, well, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and progress HPA, to the Rules Committee. But we're going to say that instead of, having the original language of the bill, we're going to say that it's a zero tax. So $0 tax, no taxation anymore on suppressors, but you still have to register the suppressors. So there's still the registration in there.
Which is the one thing that everybody was trying to get rid of. Because in actuality, if they remove the $200, let's say they remove the items, the suppressors from needing to be registered, that tax stamp, they're just going to add that onto the price of the suppressor. So they think that, so the $200 is, the tax is archaic. $200 back in the 30s and 40s was a significant amount of money. Now, not so much. So when you look at it, when you look at all, I'm going to use EVs as an example. When you look at, the tax credits that they're giving for vehicles, every single car company is adding the tax credit onto the price of the vehicle, knowing that the government is going to credit you back that amount of money. So when you go and purchase a suppressor, if this passes and they say, hey, there's no more $200 tax stamp, well, the companies know you're willing to pay the $200 on top of it because you were willing to do it before. Why not just raise prices by $200, still collect the $200 on their end instead of giving it to the government? You're giving it to the company, and then now you don't have to register. You can just buy it. It's just $200 more.
That's a very good point. That wasn't necessarily the point that I was going to draw right out the gate, but I'm glad you did, because that saved me from having to even put my brain into that mode to think about it that way. But you're right. Capitalism as a power is a superpower. Mm-hmm. Capitalism has brought more people out of poverty than any other type of system that there possibly could be. And part of capitalism is that, yes, you can sell something for whatever the market will bear. And the idea is that, okay, we've gone from removing some suppressors from the NFA completely, the original intention of the HPA, to now saying, well, you still have to register it, but there's no $200 fee. Who would benefit the most from that? Well, for one, $200 is not a lot of money to the government. So it's been a well-known fact that $200 tax stamp is nowhere near enough money to even justify the NFA existing as some sort of tax collection. If they essentially, the best way to explain this is if they were going to raise the price of a tax stamp to 1930s dollars, okay, the tax stamp would have to be $3,000 or $4,000 to even match like what that money was back then. Now, how pissed would people be if they had to buy a $600 suppressor and pay a $4,000 tax stamp? So they know that they can't increase the tax stamp to actually make it profitable for them in 1930s money. So they know they can't do that. Two, they know that the tax itself is unconstitutional because there are multiple Supreme Court cases that have already affirmed that you can't tax a right. So that's one issue they have. And then, of course, there are the constitutional ramifications, right? That the NFA is unconstitutional as it is anyway, right? So any sort of registration scheme, let's just say, is not consistent with the Second Amendment as it existed in 1791. when it was brought in. So, when we have the Bruin decision, what the Bruin decision upholds is that all laws must pass constitutional muster, and they must pass the smell test of the Second Amendment in its day, in the 1790s, right? So in those days, were there registration requirements? Were there requirements to pay fees to own a certain type of gun? Were there limitations on the type of firearm you could own? Were there limitations on what the features of that firearm could be? No, citizens had warships. They had letters of marque back then. They could literally have a warship with cannons and all the most advanced field guns of the day, whatever they wanted. And they could literally ride around and carry out piracy against enemies of the United States and keep everything that they found out there.
Privateers.
They were privateers.
Yep. So
we were all literally mercenaries. Okay. And it's just so wild to think that, we've gone from a group of people who, we get things done to now we're sitting here going over we're hawing over registration.
Right.
Think about how dumb that is. Were the founding fathers alive now, they would be like, what in the hell are y'all even talking about? This has nothing to do with the original intention of why this, was put in place, why this right is here. So not only does the NFA infringe on your rights in terms of being taxed for a right, it also infringes on the very spirit of what the Second Amendment is meant to accomplish in the first place.
It's funny you brought that up because the first thing that popped into my head was there's a Key and Peele skit about
those
the
guys
Second,
are great.
But they made one about the Second Amendment where they're writing the Constitution and they're writing the Second Amendment, and the guy pulls out 2 Uzis and he's like, what if, he's a time traveler? And it was just this whole hilarious skit where he shows how devastating the modern firearms have become. And he was like, you wouldn't write this if, you could, in the future, they could do this. And he just sprays the whole room with Uzis. But then it's almost like a Back to the Future moment where he disappears and he's like, oh yes, I succeeded. But then it comes back and then everybody has machine guns and they're like, oh, this is amazing. It completely backfired because they saw how awesome it was and they specifically wrote it in there for that reason.
And that's what would happen.
Yes.
If you showed George Washington an M60, he would be like, yeah, we're writing that in. We're putting it on the flag.
Yep.
They would put it on the flag.
It's American, man.
Come on.
That's right? The way it is.
Exactly.
Yep.
Before we get too further in the show, I do want to give a quick shout out to our friend Choq. Now, you guys know everything that's gone on with the show. We've talked a lot about testosterone and how important it is to keep your testosterone levels in check. And, many of you following this show are probably in our age range, possibly a bit younger, some of you older, of course, and from many different walks of life. And your testosterone levels are extremely important thing to keep track on. And you guys have to check out Choq. That's why we've partnered with them. They offer a whole lineup of products formulated to increase your energy, focus, detoxify your body, and clinically studied boost testosterone. Ingredients in the Choq Male Vitality Stack have been clinically studied to boost free testosterone in 87% in just 21 days. Unlike with gimmicky vegetable pills or powder, you will feel the difference, and they have the clinical studies to back it up. So right now, you can get 25% off your Choq subscription for life. Go to Choq.com. It is spelled CHOQ. That is Charlie Hotel Oscar Quebec.com, and use the promo code LLP, Lima Papa. That's 25% off any subscription for life, and you can cancel any dang time you want. Choq is made in America, and they have all-American customer service teams standing by to assist you. So get your testosterone in order, get it checked, and if you don't want to go with injections or TRT or hormone replacement therapy or anything like that, try to get your testosterone in order naturally and without the use of any injections with Choq. So check them out.
Absolutely.
So again, now let's talk about the lobbying component of this whole situation. This is where some of the, let's just say, the dirty pool starts to come out, okay? And again, the last thing I would ever want to do is start pointing fingers or naming people or trying to make a big deal about anything. But recently, okay, GOA, they just put out this tweet. In fact, I think it was this morning or yesterday. Now, mind you, today's date, y'all, is May 15th. So this is, by the time you're seeing this podcast is going to be a little longer in the tooth than when we recorded it. So bear in mind, I'm working with information that is available to me at the present time. Please remember that. I'm not trying to put out anything outdated, but I certainly want to, kind of give my thoughts on some of this stuff. And the thoughts and the ideas are almost as important as what's going on. I mean, how you approach a problem, how you solve a problem, and how you see what's really happening. The long game that is in play, that is how you figure out how in the world you're going to make the best of this situation. All right. So they put out a tweet the other day, and they were talking about how a bunch of manufacturers signed on to a letter to Congress saying that, we do not support these revisions to the HPA, that we want the HPA sent through in et original form. We want to remove suppressors from the NFA, et cetera, including several suppressor companies, et cetera, certain retailers, gun companies, industry partners, so on and so forth. All right. Hurrah. Good thing. Okay. Eric Pratt shared that, and we got that out there. And that does show some solidarity between manufacturers and the citizens who use those products. But it is also concerning because there's a lot of dang suppressor companies that are missing off that list, which would indicate that, okay, well, maybe they just didn't get the memo about signing on with GOA, or possibly they don't support what these lobbyists are trying to accomplish. Now, GOA, NRA, all of these folks, NAGR, Dudley and them, they all do good work in their own ways. But lobbying is this kind of weird. It's weird when we look at it from the perspective of average people who see it kind of like for what it is, but what it actually accomplishes is kind of two different things. So I've talked about lobbying in some other videos and some of my opinions on lobbying, and I will give some opinions in today's show, of course, but it seems that at face value, lobbying is essentially, going to a politician and kind of bribing them, like in a way. You're sort of gaining that influence from them somehow. Okay. If it comes down to, I don't know, is it contributions to a certain, cause they're trying to deal with? Is it direct cash payments? Is it, is it just, hey, we want, our issue to be your issue, and we want you to see our way on this issue. And then they're essentially, donating money to sort of, gain the ear of a person. I mean, that, and lobbying in practice is more like that. It's like, these people are not just going to give someone an audience. What you eating there? Nah, put that down. All right. Put that down. Lobbying essentially is in practice, these politicians are not just going to go and listen to any Joe Blow person off the street, right? Their influence and their ear comes at a cost. Like, you have to be someone. And all right, how do you be someone? In their eyes, well, you have to represent some sort of lobbying group, someone who looks at the collective interests of a great block of people. So if someone like, let's use GOA, for example, which, I like Eric and Aiden and the whole crew over there. They're good people. Okay. And so what they may do is they may come to the table and go, well, hey, we represent, here's a good example. We represent, I don't know how many, let's say 300,000 or 350,000 or 400,000 gun owners. Like, we represent whatever their numbers is. Hey, we represent 1 million gun owners, however many it is. When you look at a group like the NRA, if they come and they say, well, we have 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, however many million members, then that gives them the clout to come and say, our group has the influence of all these people, and we represent the common interests of all these people. So therefore, you should listen to us on this particular issue, okay? And our weight, the weight of our word is the word. It is the word of gun owners. So you essentially become the representative of all gun owners in the whole country. So the politicians can simply just look the other way and pretend that all the actual gun owners don't exist, and they can simply, the face of gun owners to them is that lobbying group. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary thing, to think that your rights could literally be in the hands of people who might have some ulterior motive that is not in line with your goals. Now, the idea is that obviously they're supposed to have boards of directors and trustees, and they're supposed to have, their own internal ways of deciding what the members actually want, and then they go and they take those desires to Washington and they lobby with the money that you donate. That's kind of the overall idea. And on paper, it sounds fruitful. It sounds good. And in some cases, to be fair, it is good, right? Lobbying does get some things that we do want. I mean, look at all the states that are constitutional carry now. That's all a direct result of lobbying, okay? Look at some of the things such as Bruin. I mean, there are many things that we have brought to light and brought to the table from effective lobbying. So I'm not here to paint lobbying as some ineffective tool for accomplishing the job. But Matt, what we also have to discuss is how can it also stab us in the back sometimes? How could lobbying stab us in the back in the case of HPA?
That's a great question. And I think you raise a very valid point, is that when you are members of these groups, you're paying dues, you're donating, and they're using that money partially for lobbying. And you don't know what their interests are. They could be very well lobbying for gun rights, to fight for your rights, but at the same time, they could also be using that for, let's not say nefarious reasons, but maybe reasons that you don't align on, or they're willing to make compromises in certain things to get their end result. Just like it's still politics, guys. Like, politics is, for lack of a better term, dirty. You have to play the game. Nobody goes into Washington and stays clean. I don't believe it. There's nothing you can say to me that will tell me that every single politician is willing to, toe the line on their own moral values, because at some point in time, they're willing to turn their head to get what they want, or to pass a law that they want, or to get their constituents on their side to make sure they're still reelected, which is, and I know this is off subject, but which is why term limits are so important. If you had term limits, that would solve a lot of those issues. But to go back to what you were saying, Eric, about lobbying groups, I pulled the data for 2024 from Open Secrets. And if you guys aren't familiar, Open Secrets has all of your government data on pretty much how the money is being spent. And on 2024, there were 50 total lobbyists. This is for these are for single issue gun rights lobbies. All right. 50 lobbyists, 11 total clients. So there's 11 groups that utilized lobbyists for gun rights, and the amount that they spent. No surprise, number one, NSSF. They spent $6.9 million 2024. GOA came in second place, $2.4 million. NRA, $2 million. National Association of Gun Rights, $1 million. Citizens Committee for Right and Keep and Bear Arms, $408,000. So this is where we start to see a drastic drop off in amount of money that was used for lobbyists. So those top 4 millions. Everything below that, 200,000. So we're going down to like 200,000, all the way down to the number 11, which is quite surprising, I might add, because I thought they might have done. Actually, it's not surprising now that I think about it, because they're a team of lawyers. They do their own stuff. FPC, they spent $20,000 total, 2024. But now that I think about it, they all do their own legal work. So it makes sense. A lot of these companies don't have like legal teams in place. They're hiring that out. So got it. But, a total of $14.7 million over the course of 2024. Now, ask yourself this, guys. What did we gain in 2024 for $14.7 million in lobbying fees? How much of that money went to buying tables at a senator or House of Representatives, table for one of their dinners to fundraise? How many tables did they buy? Like 3-4 tables at, $10,000 a piece? How many of those went to getting, gifts or trips or whatnot, just to get the ear of the congressman, just to get into a position where that lobbyist can sit next to that senator or congressman or House rep and say, hey, why don't we do this? And then them saying, nah, thanks for the trip to, Colorado for skiing. I appreciate it. Have a nice day. That's what I think of when I see this, because I didn't see anything huge come out of 2024 that would warrant, that much money being spent on gun rights.
Okay. So there's some things to unpack. One is, you brought up a really good point when you mentioned that, yes, in many cases, there are some underlying ulterior motives that some of these gun rights organizations may have up their sleeve, right? For one, if we have complete constitutional Second Amendment as we know it, the gun rights organizations are no longer a factor. Like they no longer have a job or a purpose. Now, I know that a lot of them would love to just work themselves out of a job completely and restore things to its constitutional muster, and that's fine, right? We all want that, I think, to some degree, right? So there is that factor, but I think it's a minimal factor, right? I think that the other thing to consider is that many of these people will say, okay, well, people want X, Y, Z. Let me put her down. I'm trying to keep her from getting into everything, that girl. So people want X, Y, Z. They want, okay, for instance, let's look at the Hearing Protection Act, since that's the talk right now. So, all right, we want suppressors removed from the NFA. So, of course, if you go as a lobbyist and you're talking about things that are going on, there may be components within the Second Amendment community, within the manufacturers community, that do not want the HPA to go through as it's written. Now, let's just say the Republicans may be under tremendous political pressure from our side of the camp to do something for gun rights, not just status quo. Right? You're asking about that $14 million. That $14 million could just be status quo. That could be so that nothing advances anti-gun, or that it at least gets shelved, or there's tremendous pressure put against the anti-gunners who are also have their own lobbyists who are trying to put anti-gun bills through. So at what point do the anti-gunners outspend the pro-gunners? Well, what do they have to do? Do they go, well, since the antis are outspending the pro-gunners, well, therefore now we're just going to be anti-gun because that's the convenient measure for us to have that is going to, gain us the most money or whatever. I don't think it's quite so cut and dry. I think that, a lot of companies, for instance, will donate to both Democrat and Republican PACs going into election. Many companies have gotten into a lot of trouble for donating to Democrats. And you think, well, why would you donate to Democrats? Well, if you look at it from just a strictly business point of view, do you really not want to have some form of lobbying power with those people if they do get elected? What if you live in a primarily Democrat-controlled area and you're a gun manufacturer? And what if you don't donate to those people? Then if you have an issue, if you have something you need to bring to light, are they even going to have you in their office at all if you didn't do something? So it's like the smooth brain result is that people will go, well, you're anti-gun because you donated to Democrats. Don't get me wrong. I get it. Like, I don't want them scumbags to have a single dollar of my money. But you also have to understand that it's a giant game of chess. And sometimes you have to think 3 moves ahead. And if you know dang well that a Democrat is going to get elected in the area, if you're going to have Democrat representatives, you at least stand a little bit of a chance to bring a grievance to the table that is a legitimate grievance if you've done some part to, support their effort, even if you didn't really want to support them. So the game of chess as it evolves with this stuff is that, you have to be in with all of them. And that's the thing that's so crappy about it. But getting back to what you were talking about, before is that sometimes in the Second Amendment world with the manufacturers, there might actually be some 2A manufacturers that are going against the HPA as written. They don't want suppressors off the registry. Well, why would that be? What would be their underlying purpose for not wanting suppressors to be on the registry? Well, for one, it is a luxury item that they can charge a lot of money for, as you brought up that point earlier. NFA items, have this allure of being, cool, and they have a justification for charging a lot of money for a product that, quite frankly, if a suppressor was an over-the-counter item, some of these people that are making these super high-end suppressors, now they're still going to have their clients that buy the super high-end suppressor. Don't get me wrong. But if you remove suppressors from the NFA completely and there's no registration, regardless of the tax that has to be paid, you're going to have manufacturers popping up making $150 22 suppressors. And every single person who buys a Walther P22 or a Smith & Wesson M&P compact pistol with a threaded barrel, every one of those people are going to be walking out with that add-on, with that suppressor. And for them, they're just buying a muzzle device. It would be no different than buying a muzzle device for your favorite AR or a brake for your favorite AR.
Well, think about the oil the oil filter nut.
Right.
You could just go to the shop and buy the actual adapter and just screw oil filter on.
Correct. So the kind of issue for some of these manufacturers is it's going to essentially price some of the manufacturers completely out of the competition.
That's a good point.
Now look, okay, let's look at Housekeeping. All right. Listen, there's some drama going on with Housekeeping right now. Okay. Because the ATF they just secured a contract with the ATF to provide them with suppressors.
The flow-throughs, right?
Flow-throughs, right.
Yep.
Okay, whatever. I like Housekeeping suppressors. People say what they want, but they make a fantastic suppressor. They're great, okay? I can't hate the technology just because of a few decisions that the company might make. And look, Housekeeping has always been really good to us. They've always been pretty cool. They're generally a pretty base company. I mean, hey, if somebody wants to buy a ton of suppressors, who cares? In their mind, they're capitalists. They want to make money like anyone else. I don't hate them for that purpose. But let's look at Housekeeping for an example. And again, I feel like I'm getting onto my like stepchild or something when I talk about certain companies, because that's the last thing I would ever want to do. I mean, I love their products. Okay, I'm not trying to talk crap about anybody, but Housekeeping, for instance, if suppressors were removed from the NFA, a company like Housekeeping, they're kind of like the H&K of suppressors. You know what I mean? Did she go?
Yeah, she's chewing on a wire.
Oh, she's chewing. Okay. Sorry. We have a dog incident that we're clearing up here in the studio. We don't want her to chew something up. But yeah, what would happen if we remove suppressors from the NFA? Housekeeping is kind of the H&K of suppressors. They're high end, they're nice, they're super upper end, flow through, like they're good construction, good quality materials, everything like that. So, would that cause that company to see a downward spike in sales because they were removed from the NFA completely? It could if some other manufacturer comes in and offers a very similar product for half the price. But see, that's capitalism at work, right? So could they offer the same quality product as Housekeeping for half the money? Well, it's not going to be the same quality, not going to be the same materials, construction, engineering. It's not going to be the same product. It's not going to be Housekeeping. But would someone come in and ultimately offer some form of competitively priced flow-through can that would be maybe even half the price of a Housekeeping? Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
So would Housekeeping, and I'm not calling them out and saying that they're doing this, but I'm trying to paint a picture here that drives my point home. Would Housekeeping have some underlying reason to not support the HPA in that case? If in their mind they thought a scenario like that would play out and were indeed true, then they may not actually support the HPA. And that could not only be Housekeeping, Matt, that could be a variety of other companies. All right, what about companies like Silencer Central or or Silencer Shop or any of these other silencer places that they have spent a lot of money on these kiosks and this whole fingerprinting operation, and they have a ton of money wrapped up in this whole fingerprinting operation to streamline the process and make it easier for someone to purchase a suppressor. Well, yes, they're streamlining the process. Yes, they're making it easier. But what does it involve, Matt? Registration. Okay, it involves paying the tax stamp. It involves registering the item. If you remove suppressors from the registry, those companies essentially are going out of business. Now, do you think for 1 second that those people support the HPA?
No.
Now, they say publicly that they support it, but do they really? Where's the money changing hands? Where's the influence changing hands? All I'm saying is lobbying is great. There's nothing wrong with lobbying, but it can be a double-edged sword. And just because all of us people, yeah, sure, do we want suppressors off the NFA? You're damn right we do. Do we want to have to tell the government or ask permission from the government to own something? Hell no, we don't. Do we want to pay $200? Hell no, we don't. We don't want any of them people in our business. But the truth of enterprise and capitalism and business is that there are people who do not care essentially about your rights at the end of the day. They care about staying in business. And they're working within the confines of an existing system that they make money off of. And if that system goes away or changes or completely just disappears, now there's no angle they have anymore. And if you think for 1 second those people support the HPA, I've got a bridge to sell you.
It's a very true statement.
Not hating them.
No,
just
but
saying.
you're just calling a duck when your entire business revolves around, manufacturing suppressors, R&D, and that's your lifeline. You're going to try to protect it.
Right.
And a lot of these companies, they do more than just suppressors. Some companies, that's all they do. And if I were them, as a business person, you're like, well, if this goes through, like you said, Eric, you're going to have, Jim Bob in his garage creating suppressors, selling them for half the cost. Not that that's a bad thing. And again, like you said, it's not the same quality, but not everybody wants that, $1,400 can. They don't like that. They're not going to use it to the full potential. They're just buying it because that's what's required at the time. There's not really any other competition, but now you have the opportunity. Hey, I can go and buy this $250 can as a range toy. I can put it on. I'm not taking it through, austere conditions. I'm not putting it through mud. I'm just taking it to the range. I want to pop off a couple of rounds in the backyard without, bothering my neighbor, whatever. Sure. Now they have that option. And you're going to, the bigger companies would see a drop in, guaranteed, they would see a drop in sales.
Yeah. I mean, the competition's going to go out the roof.
Oh, yeah.
If suppressors are removed from the registry.
To make. Realistically, guys, they're not terribly hard to make.
They're not.
I mean,
now look, to be fair, like those Huxworks flow-throughs, they are very nice suppressors.
And that's different technology. So that's what I was referring to. Like you have companies like that is their bread and butter. They're R&Ding new technology. Because think about like baffles, like the whole like baffle system, K baffles and whatnot. It really hasn't changed like over the course of time. And then you have like the flow through, like that's a pretty recent development, and it works really well. You're not getting gas back in the face every time, especially if you're shooting full auto. I mean, whoa, your camera angle still good?
No, I'll fix it.
All right.
You're good. Go ahead, continue, man. Dealing with some puppy stuff, y'all.
Yeah, guys. So like that flow through technology, it's pretty recent, and it is really good technology. I have a full auto integrally suppressed AR, and when you shoot that thing full auto, it's not flow through. Obviously, it's older technology. You're getting kicked back with a ton of gas in the face, and it stings. Your eyes sting after a couple magazines. You don't want to deal with it. So I can see why these companies wouldn't want that. Now, to take that one step further, Eric, not just suppressors, and I wanted to touch on. There's another act going through because they separated it, the Short Act. So the Short Act deals specifically with short barrel shotguns, short barreled rifles. So they kind of separated that. So now you have two things going through for approval. So just keep an eye out for both of those guys. You have the HPA and you have the Short Act. But to take it one step further about the NFA, not just suppressors, but let's just say machine guns, right? Everybody has this grand idea. They're like, oh, I want machine guns off the registry. I do too. That's great. And I would love it. That's not magically going to drop the price of machine guns. You go on Gunbroker right now and you'll see a pre-80s Mac 10 for transferable $10,000. All right. Or more. $10,000 or more for a 3 pieces of sheet metal stamped together with a crude firing mechanism on the inside. Ask me how I know, because we have one. So I mean, it's one of the most crude machine guns you can ever get. All right, $10,000.
They're only good for getting in a gunfight in a phone booth.
The phone booth, man, I love it. But let's just say the NFA was abolished, and now you could buy and sell machine guns. You could buy new machine guns. The price and the barrier to entry is going to be the same. And that's going to drive people wild.
For some time.
Well, think about this. The market price has been set. gun manufacturers and private sellers know what you're willing to pay for a machine gun. Just because you don't have to register it anymore doesn't mean they're going to take less money for it.
But if they open it up to where anyone can just make their own machine gun, such as in the same way as you can cut your own barrel down on your own SBR, you can
Different
cut your own
story,
shotgun
yes.
barrel down. So if we wind up doing away with the NFA and it's just like, hey, whatever you want to do, well then people just make their own machine guns.
You're
Now,
drilling that third hole.
where that is absolutely positively true is on the collectible stuff. Now, is an old Maxim or Vickers still going to be a really expensive gun? Well, yeah, because there's not going to make any more of those things, right? So there's going to be certain classics that, by virtue of the parts not being out there, they're not available anymore, unless someone comes up and decides to manufacture those things, which, of course, the market will always dictate what people will do with their money. If
Right.
people want a brand new made 1919, someone will come out and make a 1919, like Ohio Ordnance, right?
Yes.
They already make a lot of that type of stuff, so it would not be hard for them to go ahead and turn around and just make a full auto version.
They make some really interesting firearms.
Yes,
man.
they
Some
have
really
that
cool
bar,
stuff.
and imagine-
the H bar.
Yes.
The 30-06.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So what is old is always new again.
Yes.
And I really do like that company. They've got some cool stuff going on. Come here, girl. You getting bored? So to piggyback on what you're talking about with the NFA and everything like that, is that with HPA, okay, we have this watered down version where, well, we won't have the $200 tax stamp, but we'll include the registration. You still have to have the registration. So politically, what does that accomplish? Well, again, listen, don't kill the messenger, y'all. I'm not saying I agree with them changing up the circumstances under which HPA could theoretically get passed. This is still not even out of the Rules Committee yet. So it hasn't even gone to the House floor for a vote as of the time of making this video. Today is the 15th, y'all. So there's still some time to change the language. And it could change by the time this podcast drops. Just keep that in mind. So we're going back in time here, guys. This is a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. All right, could the language change? Yes, it could change. But as it sits right now, okay, as it stands, it appears that there's some compromise on the table, right? Well, what is it, and in the view of the politician, what does this compromise accomplish? One, in their head, again, this isn't me, this is me speaking theoretically about what these people may have going through their heads right now. For one, they go, well, gun owners should be happy. They're saving $200 and they don't have to pay for a tax stamp anymore. That very well may be true for some, right? In their mind, they may be going, well, the manufacturers who are coming to us behind closed doors and saying they're unhappy about the registry being taken out of there for suppressors, and you know, they don't want to be painted as anti-gun or painted as tyrants or painted as anything other than just business people. But let's face it, they have some concerns over suppressors being removed from the NFA because it's going to absolutely disrupt and therefore even maybe possibly bankrupt their entire business model. So it's making those people happy because it's keeping the registry. And then three, you know, the Republicans get some clean hands and they can say, well, see, look, we did something for gun owners. But did they really do anything? They really didn't. They know that the tax stamp is unconstitutional. So they're actually protecting themselves by passing this legislation to remove the tax stamp because that's actually preventing that section of the NFA from being challenged, at least in the meantime, possibly being challenged in the Supreme Court. Imagine the $200 tax stamp goes to the Supreme Court and they go, hey, we're going to look at the constitutionality of taxing a right under the guise of the firearms stuff. And imagine that the Supreme Court goes our way on that and they say, well, wait a minute, y'all. All right, brewing here. Okay. Mm-hmm. You know, for one, you can't have a registry. You know, we've already tried to tell the ATF you cannot maintain a registry on normal Title I stuff. Well, then why are we doing it on NFA stuff? Two, there was nothing in place early on that passes a smell test that would lend us to think that some registry is even constitutional to begin with anyway. And then third, the $200 tax stamp is unconstitutional anyway. And by the way, y'all, we've already said that here, and here, like in 3 or 4 different cases. We've already said that you can't do this. So they don't want that to go to the Supreme Court. They do not want that case to be made before the Supreme Court. So the Republicans, as much as we want to, think that they're all pro-gun and this sort of thing, I mean, look, they can tell you they're pro-gun all day long, but this is also a way for them to kind of cleverly cover their ass
Well,
to keep this out of the Supreme Court. Because trust me, they do not want this whole NFA thing going for the Supreme Court. Because they know if it goes our way, it's going to set forth a very large constitutional bubble for them to overcome. That future administrations, like, all right, if we have a mostly anti-gun administration and they want to pass a bunch of anti-gun crap, they're going to have a much more difficult time getting it through a smell test that involves, hey, the $200 tax stamp's unconstitutional. The NFA is unconstitutional. Hey, here are multiple courts who verify that the AR-15 and variants of modern guns are protected by the Constitution. So once you have all these things in place in the court, it really does landlock any future anti-gun efforts, especially under the Bruin standard, that could ever take place. So I think there's a greater ploy in place than we might even see.
I agree. And it's not just Republicans, but it's also Democrats. So I'm just going to use this as a quick example. And this isn't really the NFA, but firearms and gun control in general. So, Eric, Washington, D.C. is one of the most locked down anti-gun places in America. The police, the Capitol Police and the regular police have to turn their firearms in after their shift. So they get to the police station and they draw the firearms, and then when they get off their shift, they turn their firearms in. That to me is crazy. But with that said, you definitely can't take firearms into the Capitol building. All right. And what happened? New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, his assistant/driver, this happened a couple months ago, and you haven't heard hardly anything about it. Cory Booker's assistant/driver brought a firearm, concealed carry, into the Capitol building, got caught with a concealed firearm. What happened? Nothing. One or two news stories, slap on the wrist. Man, if that was a normal citizen, you'd be in prison right now. And to think that the double standard that there is for, the quote, senators and lawmakers compared to your American citizen, it's insane to think that someone can have such a double standard applied and there's no outrage. I don't see any of the, gun lobbyists. I don't see any of the, gun groups saying, hey, what's going on with this? Why are we not making a bigger deal out of this? That was a prime example of what we could do to say, hey, rules for thee, but not for me. But we did not take advantage of it in any sort. And that's just a great example, in my opinion, on how the differences between what those that we put into government to represent our interests are treated versus us, the average American that has to live under the tyrannical rule of said government.
Bro, it's so true that like when we have control of the ship, it's like we do nothing with it.
Yep.
We don't even try to move the gears of government. We
Imagine
just go, status quo, here we are,
Imagine if that was a Republican.
Oh, I know.
Dude, it'd still be in the news right now.
So we're going to take a moment to give a shout out to another one of our show sponsors. And look, y'all, this is a company, I really love these guys. I believe in what they're doing, and I love their freaking products, and I think you will too. When it comes to gear that can handle anything, there's no better choice than Undertac. Designed for and tested by an elite special forces team in Africa's harshest conditions, Undertac is made to perform when it matters most. Whether you're navigating through terrain or just tackling your day, their underwear, socks, and shirts keep you dry, comfortable, and mission ready. Made from premium materials like modal, is 50% more moisture wicking than cotton. Undertac offers tactical performance that goes beyond the basics. From the ultra-comfortable boxer briefs to the American-made battle weave merino socks, you'll feel the difference. And your boys will too. Don't forget the hoodies and EDC t-shirts, rugged enough for anything, yet comfortable enough for everyday carry. Go to undertac.com, that's undertac.com, and use the code LLP to get 20% off site-wide. Whether you're gearing up for an adventure or everyday life, you can trust Undertac to have your back. Ooh, that's got a ring to it. Plus, a portion of profits support veteran-run organizations fighting human trafficking. Now, that's a damn no-brainer if I ever said so. Visit Undertac.com. Use the code LLP20 to get 20% off site-wide. Code LLP20. That's Lima Papa 20. Undertac.com. I love their infantry breeches, the under breeches. Those underwear are so freaking awesome. And I'm telling you, you're not going to look like a little wimp when you're wearing them either.
No, it is great. Great products, great company.
I'm telling you, you've got to try this freaking underwear, y'all. Do you think that I would be making a freaking ad about underwear if I didn't like what they did? Come on, y'all. Buy some of the dang underwear. Do your boy solid. And it helps the show as well. Great group of people. We're going to take a couple questions real quick. I know we still have a few minutes on the show here. All right, so I'm tuning into Twitter here. We've got a few comments here. Dissident Media says, is this a new podcast? If you ever need guests to talk about grassroots lobbying, the guys at Defend the Guard are excellent. Okay.
Speak of the devil.
Good deal. And I appreciate that comment. That's great. So to answer the question, no, this is not a new podcast. LLP has been around for some time. We are in our 119th episode. I think this is episode 119, if I'm not mistaken. So we're 119 episodes in. So we've been doing this a while. Matt and I did take a break from doing the podcast because, he got really busy with the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, getting it up and running, and now it's doing great, and I'm in a position where we're ready to get back. So we're bringing the podcast back. Appreciate that comment there. And Dissident Media is also a follower of mine over on Twitter. They have a great Twitter page as well. Check them out at Dissident Media. All right. Great group of folks there. I follow them as well. JP Mogan, 97942 says, yes, have you reconsidered your stance on the Sikhs and the Marine Corps now that you are woke on the Jews? Whew. Wow, what a question. But hey, I'm not scared. Look, I'll go there. I consider the Sikhs to be a very morally pure group of people. I've never had a problem with any of them. Every Sikh I've ever met has always been a fair person, just. I mean, just because a Marine wants to wear a turban, I ain't got a problem with that. Do you, Matt?
No, not at all.
As long as they do their job.
Guys, there's exemptions and profiles for everything. Way before there was a headgear, exemption for religious reasons. Religious exemptions and profiles were probably one of the normal things in the military. What wasn't normal was like a shaving profile. Or like a no PT profile. All right. Yeah. I would probably have something worse to say about those guys than a Sikh that is seeking a religious exemption for wearing a turban.
Look, guys, I will tell you this. To people in the military, it doesn't freaking matter. Okay. There might be a small, silent minority that has an issue with, a Marine wearing a turban versus the traditional headwear. The truth is, I think society just looks at it as some talking point that they can just point a finger and say, oh, look at this is woke, it's whatever. The truth is, as long as that Marine does his freaking job, I don't care what headgear he wears. I'll tell you what, if I'm bleeding out on the damn battlefield and someone wants to carry me off the battlefield, if the guy's got a freaking turban on, hey, as long as he can carry my gargantuan butt off the battlefield, hey, he can wear whatever he wants. I don't care.
That's right.
Good question. He thought I wasn't going to answer that one. I don't care. Yeah, I have my criticisms about Israel. I'm not going to lie about that. Kyle Wilson says that lobbying behind closed doors is legal, but if you want to pay someone for sex, you have to film it and put it on the internet for it to be legal. Or
at least make the offer so that way they don't so they don't arrest you.
Oh my God. Oh man. Garbage _300 says, are we back on to gun gripes or do you have a different podcast? Well, guys, we've always had LLP. And I haven't cut a lot of other shows on the channel. I've been kind of busy with some other things. Well, basically just life. Okay. I've been living life. And for the last 17 years, I've been producing this YouTube channel religiously. And quite frankly, I'm taking a little time to, take care of some things in the house, clean up, just enjoy life a little bit. It's been a long road. I mean, 17 years is a long time to put out content. Now, with that being said, I have a ton of stuff coming up, including more gun gripes, 5 guns, range videos, etc. I just got to get my butt back in gear and get back in the field. Okay.
It's a motivation.
I'm getting there, y'all. Okay. One more question here. We'll wrap up the show. Curtis Woodard, Kurt and C. Lobbying is fundamental to government of, by, and for the people. It's just that the people don't have the time and the inclination to lobby on their own behalf. That leaves the field open to those who can pay others to lobby for them. The people, by and large, abdicated. Good point.
I think it's a very good point. I think, the big part of people being against lobbyists is not that they're against lobbying. It is necessary because someone has to tell the lawmakers what the word on the street is, because they are so far removed from what's actually going on. You're talking about guys that have drivers. When you hear lawmakers, congressmen, House reps talking about, how much is a gallon of milk? They wouldn't know how much a gallon of milk is. They wouldn't know how much eggs cost. They're getting fed that information. So they do need lobbyists to, keep them up to date. The thing that people don't understand or they aren't aware of is that, and I have the data here from Open Secrets, 46% of lobbyists are former lawmakers that worked in the building alongside the congressman. So they are within that, they're using their existing influence to make more money, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when you stay in that business and there's no term limits for those congressmen or lawmakers, then it becomes a reciprocating loop of, hey, this guy, he worked as an aide for 1 year. He has the relationship of that lawmaker. And then that lawmaker keeps getting reelected term after term after term. And they're just creating a long-term job for themselves versus, hey, if we just put in term limits, then you would have to have turnover with the lobbyists, because the lobbyists wouldn't be able to stay there for 10 years and milk that short relationship they have with those lawmakers.
Bro, that is such a great point. I'm so glad you brought it up in today's show, because that's one area that Thomas Massey and I have maybe respectfully disagreed on here and there, but I am coming around on Thomas Massey's view of term limits. Thomas Massey, his view is that, well, if we have term limits, you never know what boogeyman's there. You don't know who's there. So if we have a revolving door of people, now you're having to constantly rediscover who's who, where their allegiances lie. And by the time you figure out who's who, they're gone. They fly the coop, and then there's some other person in there who could be a scumbag. They could be better. How do you know?
But that's what the people wanted, though. That's what the people voted for.
I know, but at least if you have the same people, there's a relationship there between the lobbyists, between the congressmen. You have a voting record, and that was Massey's point, was that if we don't have term limits, at least you have a record of consistency. You know what that person's moral code is by being able to analyze their votes, by being able to analyze their stock trades.
Which is a whole nother podcast.
Which is a whole other thing, y'all. A whole nother thing. Nancy, we're listening to you now, okay? If you just trade like Nancy, you're going to be rich.
They have a bot that publishes her trades.
Yeah, follow Unusual Wells on Twitter. They have a bunch of great, unusual bubbles of the market that will certainly point you in some really interesting rabbit holes if you're willing. So check it out, Unusual Wells on Twitter. And a quick shout out before we sign off on today's show. Make sure you go and check out the Twitter page. I engage in some spicy commentary over there, but I do love engaging with the audience on Twitter. You can also field your comments and suggestions for the show for LLP over on the Iraq Veteran 8888 Twitter page. Many of you know as well, we post this podcast in video form over on Iraq Veteran 8888, tentatively by 9 Eastern time every Monday. Sometimes I forget to upload the show. I apologize. I'm kind of like the dude. Right. So it's like, sometimes I get a little bit procrastinating on
I try to throw a reminder to you. I'm like Sunday night. I'm like, hey.
Yeah. Hey, man, that show. But anyway, it's been great. I've enjoyed today's show, and I think we went down some really interesting, hopefully areas that are thought-provoking. Maybe some of you have your thoughts about lobbying. There are some things that weren't discussed in the show that I really wanted to touch on. We just didn't have enough time one thing I'll just make a last closing remark about lobbying is that there are essentially two basic types of lobbying within the gun industry. Okay. One is what I call, I don't know who coined the term. Maybe I coined the term or whoever did, but let's just say one is access based. One is, hey, we go to the country club and do all the crazy, ass kissing with these people. And therefore, we're going to try to be buddy with them. And that's how we're going to get our influence. Mm-hmm. There's the access based type of lobbying. And then there's we're going to primary your ass into oblivion type of lobbying. Right. So each of the lobbyists, and of course you look at people at FPC, they're going to have the lawsuit machine going burr, right? The printer's going burr. What do they mean by that? All right, that's not access based. That's, hey, we're going to just sue your ass into oblivion based. Yep. So they're going to just actively sue the crap out of them. They're going to be buddy with them and try to be friends with them and have that sort of relationship. Or they're going to go to them and say, hi, well, look, we're cool. But just know that if you don't do what we want, we're gonna lobby. We're gonna push our members to vote your ass out come midterms or November. So that's how the lobbying, all of those arms, become part of a greater machine that affects how these bills either progress or they don't. Sometimes they lie dead on the floor. So I guess want to end this podcast, today's show, by saying that all of the lobbying groups, no matter who they are, they all serve a pretty essential role to the overall process of how things work. I would suggest, supporting all of them, as much as it pains me to say this, because I have some issues with the NRA. I have not always agreed with the NRA, okay? But if you got a few extra bucks to support all of them, join GOA, join NRA, join, FPC, join Dudley over there at NAGR. They're all great people. They all have their own little tactic. And all of it equates to what I view as an overall pretty effective method for closing in on the enemy and getting what we need to get done on Capitol Hill. Now, I'll end by saying this, and again, not to grandstand or anything. I've never accepted a single dollar from a gun rights organization. I've never accepted a bit of pay. I was the Georgia State Director for GOA for a couple of years. I've recently stepped down from that position. I've had my issues with the NRA over the years. I have never accepted a single dollar from a gun rights organization for anything. I refuse to take money from a gun rights organization for any reason at all, whether it's employment, whether it's engagement, whether it's for getting signups for them, whatever the case may be. My heart has always been in the fight of the Second Amendment and nothing more. I do not view the undergoing of lobbying or the undergoing of being involved with a gun rights organization. I don't view it as a money-making apparatus. I view it as a service that I provide, that I lend the ear of my viewership to the goals of those gun rights organizations in order to positively move the needle in the direction it needs to go in to change the culture of gun ownership. That's what I care about. I care about winning the game. I don't care about, okay, maybe in moving, logistics win wars, right? That's what they say. Logistics win wars, not soldiers. By moving the chess pieces on the board where we need to move them to accomplish the goal, yeah, some money's going to change hands. That's logistics. The logistics of moving the chess pieces to trap the anti-gunners and get our checkmate, right? In the moving of those chess pieces, there's going to be some money changing hands. I don't care about the money changing hands. I don't care about that. I don't want their damn money. I don't want the members' money. I want to checkmate the king. I want to win the war. That's what I care about. And I want the most rapid way for that to occur. And in my mind, if I take no money, if I accept no paycheck, that's my way of contributing what I can contribute to the greater cause at hand. So take it for what you will. That's my view. It may not be everyone's view, but that's the way I look at it. Anything else before we go, Matt?
No, man, that was a bombshell to end the show on. But I mean, I'm just glad, the viewers have been absolutely amazing, guys. The comments have been very supportive. I know that Eric and I took almost close to 2 years off just to get right. It's you got to refresh. You got to get your life right before you can start back. And we decided that whenever we come back and we start the show, we're going to be able to dedicate much more time to it, a little bit more production value. And we've succeeded. I think, Eric, you've done a great job of, getting everything here set up. And the conversations have been great, man. Like today was a great conversation, and hopefully, the listeners enjoy it. And it's just something for you guys to munch on while you're working. A lot of you guys tell us this is what gets you through your work day. I'm glad that you choose to listen to us, because, we're just, in the end, we're just two guys having a conversation about probably what you're thinking about.
That's right. That's right. One last little housekeeping before we go that I thought about here is that with the show and everything like that, we are trying our best to get some more guests. I know some people have been asking about when we're going to bring guests in. I am still doing some work here on the studio. If you want to drop a super thanks and drop a few bucks, I'm not going to complain about some war bucks in the war chest. We do have sponsors on the show that help with that as well. But pretty much I am dumping every dang dollar on this show that I make back into production. I'm buying more lighting soon. I know there a few folks have been asking about lighting. The mics, audio, I think is really good. So let me know if you guys like the quality of the audio. Does everything sound good? Always let us know. Give us all the feedback. We'd love to know, like, how's the video look? How's the audio sound? How's the lighting look? Like, I know those things may not matter, but to me they matter. I want things to look right. And let me know what type of guests you want to see. And look, it's not only going to be just gun people. We're going to bring a bunch of random people in to join in on the conversation. So I'm so ready to get this studio like the way I want it. I see it finished in my head, and it's like I'm so ready to get it done, man. Going to be great.
Yeah, man.
This is going to be the ultimate hangout room.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to change a bit. You're going to notice some difference, but it's going to be dope.
Right on.
All right, man. Well, have a good week, Matt, and we'll catch you guys next week on the show. We're out.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Ink by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, dangerous freedom. Have a good one.